understatement, but we are accepting of the reality of it, and we think that this proposal tonight before you to consider, at least at the outset, is something that preserves, as Pam said, the core program, because we think that we're looking at the sad reality that that's all we can afford.
Can you cut staff, Joe, without reducing the graduation requirements?
I don't know that I really can answer that. It's the course selection process is so varied year to year and depends so much on what students' interests are for that particular year and what courses are of most interest to them and where they want to sign up for electives, particularly with juniors and seniors. And it's really very difficult for me to say to you that there are particular areas that could be cut and still sustain a program. But I think in honesty, I do think there is room for that, but there is a byproduct of an increased class size. If we were to run something that requires the 28 credits for graduation, but I think it would be a minimum of 28 spread out over certain defined areas, but I do think it would be challenging, but it is something that a great deal of thought has been given for me to even propose to you 4 teachers. Is devastating, but I think if we could preserve the core, and I don't know that we would be able to preserve the graduation requirements in the same way that we have been doing that. I think that certainly is something that would be in jeopardy.
Knowing the class sizes, I know, John, and hearing 4 teachers, when you hear class sizes of between 27, 28, 30, and these are a lot of classes. I don't see how you could reduce 4 teachers and still maintain those graduation requirements without exceeding 30 per class in a lot of cases. I just don't see
To
how.
go hand in hand, I think, is probably the case.
But
to reduce the classes and to reduce graduation requirements is a very real possibility.
Maybe David's idea, which he discussed earlier, is maybe in the freshman and sophomore years they're only required to take 7, and maybe they can take 8 in the.
Could be a phased-in reduction.
Because I think our 8 classes per year puts us ahead of a lot of other districts in what we require our kids to take.
I think more than that, the distribution is probably more than what a lot of other schools, that is the 4 years of English, math, science, and social studies,
yes.
Particularly in the science and social studies.
Yes, and I think we ought to do all we can to preserve that, because it is difficult to get into college these days, and the more advantage we can give our kids, the better off.
I think a lot of progress has been made, and I think a lot of people, particularly the teachers, have worked very hard, and some of our students have initiated ideas for elective course offerings, the things that they are interested in. So I think you're right, but it's just it's disappointing,
right,
to look at these kinds of things and what might happen as a result of those reductions.
If we were to look at the reassignment of curriculum leadership so that they were teaching full classes, would you be able to protect some of those positions or some of those programs from elimination if your department chairs were working a full load?
It's already factored in.
I think they go hand in hand, I believe, at least with the information I'm able to use now. And again, it's a process that evolves over several months based on the student's interests. But I think as this sheet identifies them being, both of those things as being identified possible reductions for teachers and the redistribution of the assignment of the curriculum chairs.
Just one other thing, then I have a question for the middle school. At the high school, before we consider reducing the graduation requirement, would you consider something for the older students, like credits for internships, rather than just sending them home earlier in the day or reducing their requirements? Could we look at, it would serve to beef up our business ed department if these kids who are choosing to go on to a career or community college had some work experience. And
My opinion is that everything is something to look at.
and I think too, in other lines where we're trying to address nutrition and health and obesity issues, but then we cut PE for juniors and seniors. If there could be some way that those kids can get credit for participating in sports or utilizing the facility with minimum supervision, these kids, sort of like an internship in a work field, they could actually be working towards some kind of a health and wellness program and earn credits for it. You could have potentially 60 kids participating in something like that, getting credits and only needing one oversight. Some, report that they turn in quarterly or something. And it does reduce your staff, but it keeps kids connected to learning, especially in two areas that I think we lack, our business ed and our health and wellness. Just
I think
some ideas
honestly,
to
I
keep
think
our high
I think
school
everything
kids
is something to be explored. I do.
Mr. Faucher, I have a question at the middle school, trying to, not lose two teachers. Is there anything in our schedule that we could be looking at to keep class sizes down or to keep teachers? Have we gone too far in giving teachers prep and inclusion and collaboration time? Now that you've had time to get your feet wet?
It's difficult to say, I was thinking you were gonna ask me where would those two teachers be coming from, which grade level, what program, and again, you can clearly see that everybody at this table here is all taking a hit, so our share of the process is gonna look like two teachers, and we're gonna really look at our schedule. We're gonna really look at some flex times. We're gonna, I'm taking some examples from the high school and how they schedule to maybe control class size, still offer the same programs that we're currently offering. I'm going to get very, very creative. So, I'm glad you didn't ask me which program, because I really don't know yet. It has to be, all those things have to be weighed into how we can manage and operate our day and still offer as best a program as we possibly can without, taking, middle school took a big step forward this year. We added reading comprehension in grade 6 and second ELA class in grade 7, enhanced our world language. We now have PE and health for all middle school kids. Big step forward. So taking a step backwards here now with the two teachers, how do I absorb that loss? How do we absorb that loss and still maintain that program? So scheduling, all that stuff, how much time is for collaboration, all that thing is going to all have to come into play.
For many years, as a committee, we've protected the class size, and I think we've done a pretty good job. If you look at the numbers, we've been successful in keeping them low. We've had some high times.
Mainly
but-
at the elementary, though, we've
Yeah.
been more successful, I think,
We've
than
spiked and been able to come down in some areas. At the middle school, we've done,
this year, yes.
but now but at the expense of programs, we have no foreign language. We try to get it in the 7th grade, then we pull back, and we're cutting electives at the high school, and we could certainly do so much more at the middle school. So I'm wondering if we lost the quality in our programs to maintain class size, and what would it look like if we allowed class sizes to get bigger to keep some of those programs?
More mediation college.
You think so?
I do think so. I honestly think that preserving class size for core courses, and I don't think we're eliminating electives for students at the high school, but we're reducing their choice options. They won't get to take as many, but they'll be on par with many successful high schools in the state. It's critical to try and maintain student-teacher ratios, because if they can't function in the fundamentals, all of the extras we provide them aren't going to be of as great value.
What is that number then at the high school? Why do we have such high numbers, up near 30?
A lot of the electives,
In the class size.
yes.
Yeah.
It depends on the electives. I mean, that is the case in art, clearly, and it is the case in many of the business ed electives. I think it's an issue of staffing. You have 100 students sign up for Microsoft applications. That's 4 sections of 25, as an example. But if you only have 3 teachers available, 3 teaching sections available, well, now it's 3:30s and 10 students get their second choice elective. It's a numbers game. The interest is there. The electives
Yes,
are,
they
the elective
are.
areas are high. I mean, we're running novel writing this year for the first time. There's 30 students. I had to stop. I had to cut it off. 30. I mean, there was such great interest in that. Probability and statistics, a new elective this year, we're running 2 sections. Our SAT prep course, 65 students are in that. I mean, the interest is there, but I do agree with Pam, given what we're confronted with now, that the preservation of the core is where the energies now need to go, and there's a limiting of the breadth of what we offer, disappointing as that might be. I think it's where we are at right now in terms of what we're considering.
And I do want to point out before I go to Chris and then to Bill, the other number that I always like to refer to is we are one of the highest, not the highest pupil-teacher, have one of the highest pupil-teacher ratios in the state already. It's well over 1 or 2 students, and the way they figure it out, it's not the way, I think our number is something like 16 or something like that, because they take every staff you have and just divide it into the number of kids and say, here's we all know that's not the real
That's not
ratio.
teachers to
Not teachers to
classrooms.
classrooms, but we're already at the highest level in the state. Christine?
Any special ed director will tell you that if you increase class size, you increase your special ed costs. Because that child who could make it in a class of 20, who's now in a class of 30, can't make it because the teacher doesn't have enough time to give the extra attention. And so then you bump that child into a higher level of cost.
Yeah, I'm just looking back, 14 years ago I came here, and it's been very, very, very disturbing the past couple of weeks, and I've sort of sat back a bit more than my colleagues, to be quite honest with you, because I just, it's not David's fault, it's not the committee's fault, it's economic times, but it's been very, very, how I feel, we all feel about our schools, and a lot of work and time and energies have gone into building them up over time. I'm not exactly sure, Maureen, what you meant about cutting programs at elementary. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't know if you meant art, music, and phys ed.
Yeah.
Because please don't do that. Those programs are just so much a part of children's development and ways of them expressing themselves and ways of some of them making their living someday at the root, before they get to middle school or high school. They add a fabric to an elementary school that is just indescribable. It's what some of them live for in the day that gets them through the harder parts of the day. I would also say that we can look at a chart and see what classes can be combined at a grade level and still have nice little neat packages of 25 or 28. But I'm going to say that that any of us could say, the makeup of that group, maybe a dozen special ed children or various medical needs or whatever. I think all of us are very, very dedicated and serious about providing David with honest information about where cuts that we don't prefer, but where cuts can be made and where they can't. But I don't forget, we're still operating at less than full throttle in our technology and in our beautiful libraries. And to cut art, music, and phys ed, we're just trying to rebuild our band, and it just would be a shame. And I hope that we don't go back again to that. Hard decision. Hard decisions.
David, do you want to make any? I don't think we're gonna. I think we need to have a budget workshop. I think we need to have some public input sessions, even if it's just to let people get things off their chest. But tonight, I think it's just to get this information, to absorb it, and then figure out what we're going to do with it moving forward.
Well, I think I know that we're meeting again, finance planning team, and we'll continue to look at revenue. I know that there are ongoing discussions around health insurance, and whether or not there'll be any health insurance reform from the governor, and how that's all plays into contracts and negotiations. We'll see that. And I think that is an area that parents and others can, be effective in trying to lobby. I think a lot of good work has already gone on in terms of trying to advocate strongly for education. The fact that the governor has so far protected Chapter 70 money, and we know that it does